Hey everybody, this is Way to Fail with another ranked replay for Scrolls. This match between iScrE4m and neco is going to be a energy deck versus an order deck, so let's go ahead and get started. neco is going to be the first to draw, and you can see this is from iScrE4m's perspective. Thank you again for providing me with this replay. And iScrE4m starts off with some decent direct damage between Thunder Surge, which isn't going to do him a lot of good early, so he sacks it. But he does have an Hell Spitter Mortar, does have some direct damage. Ether Pump, Iron Whip, Fury, all things he can use later. But right now, it's just a matter of he's getting his big cards and he's got to sort of prioritize what is he going to use, what is he not going to use. But neco with his order deck, and here's brief conversation again, aren't you Chetch? I actually don't know. I don't know enough about the background of these players. One day I'll learn. But neco puts out the first unit, a Royal Spearman, and iScrE4m responds with the typical Hell Spitter Mortar, which is a great wall that just happens to have a bonus attack as well every 2 turns. So if you leave those on the board long enough, your probability odds are not going to be in your favor. But neco getting out some good creatures quickly, like having the Spearman and then the Ducal Skirmisher behind him. And iScrE4m responds by getting out an Ether Pump. So while he doesn't have much on the board creature-wise to respond, this is direct damage that can do quite a bit of good if left unchecked. But neco puts out Ye Old Royal Vanguard. So right now, neco's trying to get the old Order Ball of Death up early. So real quick, we got a Potion of Resistance on hand from iScrE4m, so that's going to do a good job of protecting this unit, because don't forget, Potion of Resistance actually does apply to structures. It just says unit. It's not just for creatures. So as a result, this guy's going to be able to go off at least once unless he commits everything to attacking it, if he can even get it off in time. But the Hell Spitter Mortar, does it hit anything? No. But you got 1 in 15 odds of hitting a particular tile, so he's just going to go straight for the Hell Spitter and let that Ether Pump go. So right now, iScrE4m getting up to 6 energy, and he uses the Violent Dispersal wisely on the Vanguard. So there's the direct damage. Notice that iScrE4m hasn't been drawing for cards yet. Notice neco hasn't been drawing for cards yet as he plays Imperial Resources, just to make his entire side happy. Sure, the Hell Spitter Mortar has 1 more to go, but now both these guys, even though they have short hands, they can start going for cards. They have the resources they need to get started. So iScrE4m certainly doesn't need 2 Bombards. But a Gravelock Elder and a Scattergunner are certainly good things to have. Notice he tucked the Gravelock Elder behind the Ether Pump with the Potion of Resistance. He wants to protect this unit as best he can so he can get some more out. But there's Imperial Resources, and there's a Pother, which does a really fortunate job of moving that unit over. Because now with the Blessing of Steel, that unit who was protected is now no longer. So iScrE4m has another Ether Pump, but suddenly no Gravelock Elder to go with. So while no one's done damage so far to the idols, right now neco seems to have the upper hand in terms of resources, in terms of getting his creatures out, in terms of dealing with the direct damage from the Ether Pump. But iScrE4m does have one of his own, and the other Hell Spitter Mortar could help him out. But neco suddenly getting... Okay, first off, neco having enough resources to play an Honorable General and a Royal Vanguard in 1 turn is rough to deal with. And iScrE4m's going to have to figure out what to do here, because these guys are going to get some attacks in. But remember, this is a long game. It's not something that you're going to win by turn 9 or turn 10. Not with energy. Not with order either. But he does Iron Whip. So he is trying to go ahead and get some clearance off the board here. So maybe he can get lucky with the... Nope, not that time. You always want to hope for the Hell Spitter Mortar. When it works for you, it really works for you. But there's the Kabonk to take out the Scattergunner, just to not mess with that again. But iScrE4m does have some good response cards in his hand with the Gravelock Elder, with the Cannon Automaton. Automaton. I've heard it pronounced both ways. But neco getting his creatures on the board again, and iScrE4m's going to have to try and do something to deny the board, because if neco can go unchecked, this could be problematic. But right now there's a Violent Dispersal, I say Violet, I mean Violent, which he uses on the Honorable General, because as much as it sucks to give adjacent units +2 attack, it's even worse to give them constant cooldown drops. So there's the Ether Pump, and what does the Hell Spitter do? Takes out the Vanguard. So big turn of events for iScrE4m. Big turn. All at once. So now we got to get neco back on the board. Got to deal with those Hell Spitters or they will just go. The Inferno Blast isn't going to do a lot of good there for neco, so he decides instead to bring out an Elder, and he wisely decides to Potion of Resistance the Elder. I mean, it wouldn't be too wise to resist the mortar when it has 1 life. Because it's not plating, it's not something that drops the damage to 0. But will this mortar kill finally? No, it will not. But here's a few attacks. Actually, Neco can take out both of these mortars this turn, but he does push back the Elder, which is an important pushback because it actually takes out the Potion of Resistance that he had just played. So that was a really smart denial by Neco. But there goes 1 mortar. There goes another mortar. He could have taken out both, like I said, but if that mortar's not going to attack, he can just deal with it next turn. So there's an Inferno Blast that may or may not be useful. It's good to do some damage, but hey, we've seen this before from iScrE4m. He gets another Potion of Resistance. He puts it right back on the Elder. And now he can use the Inferno Blast to possibly take out these units between the Ether Pump and the 1 damage if he decides to clump them all up. So Neco's got to be careful. But he's just going to clump them all together anyway. So iScrE4m could clear this entire chunk of people. Assuming this Ether Pump goes down, so he has a Spark. There's the Inferno Blast, and there is a bunch of very vulnerable units. So Neco is about to lose a lot of board control here. As he plays Fury, increase all units cooldown by 1. That's to clear the entire board. Remember, Fury is all units, but it doesn't really matter when all those units are going to get Ether Pumped or taken out by the Gravelock. So great turnaround for iScrE4m, as Neco has 11 order, but got to figure out what to do with it. He does bother to try and draw a card. He gets a Royal Vanguard. He gets a Ducal Skirmisher, but notice that Ball of Death has been taken out by iScrE4m, and he's got to build it back in some way, shape, or form. And with a Violent Dispersal there, and another Hellspitter Mortar, and a Bombard, it looks like iScrE4m does have the tools in his hand to try and deal with this. Especially if he can get another Gravelock Elder on the board without any resistance from Neco. Notice that iScrE4m has bumped up his energy to 7, and notice that Neco has a lot of stuff on the board now. Just slowly but surely. But notice here too that iScrE4m has 8 energy. Neco has 11, but look at who has cards in their hand. Neco has cleaned his hand. So that's going to slow down what he's trying to do a little bit. Meanwhile, iScrE4m gets 2 Elders out. And protected by all of these walls. That is a tough nut to crack. So Imperial Resources is going to buy Neco some time. And the Kabonk is going to help. Question is that does Neco have another pushback to maybe try and get past one of these walls to go after here? But he decides instead to take out the Ether Pump so that he isn't constantly getting cycled damage. Thunder Surge, that's a very fortunate card for iScrE4m to get. He decides to go ahead and play it. Because now that means Neco's going to have to deal with these low health units. I mean, he has a Copper Automaton, but that's a good card to sit on just to react to whatever Neco decides to put out. But here we go with Speed, Blessing of Haste, and this is going to be kind of painful here because there goes the other Ether Pump. And this doesn't quite take out a Gravelock Elder, but he is hurting. But iScrE4m gets a good draw there. He gets another Ether Pump that he decides to play. Notice that he's using walls to his advantage to protect units. This is something that energy, you got to use them right to really be good at, because a lot of their structures can do some good damage. And if these Gravelock Elders can just go, especially if iScrE4m can get out a third, there's a problem. So there's a Transposition, thank you, Commoner, for reminding me how that's actually pronounced, to move those cards around. And the Waking Stones are there to protect this Skirmisher. But right now, iScrE4m has a lot on the board, and it's going to really be up to Neco to see if he can take advantage of all of the resources he has, because he can play a lot of cards at once. He just has to get cards. So there is the Bombard from iScrE4m, and this is going to hurt. Well, at least not with the Waking Stones, but this guy still, this Royal Skirmisher still has Relentless. And there is the Imperial Resources, so Neco just keeps getting these cards back and forth. But there's a focus on the Skirmisher. He's up to 7 damage, so he's going to be able to take out one of the Elders before iScrE4m can really do anything to really ramp him up. So he has a Spark and a Burn, gets his sweet revenge on one of the Vanguards. And he could Spark and get another card. He has a Copper Automaton as well. Don't really know if there's a ton to play with that right now, considering they won't take out the Waking Stones. But it is a good card to have in his pocket once again. So quick Kabonk. And once again, Neco's just got to get some cards. And cards like Kabonk are good because they'll get you more scrolls. But between, let's see here, a skirmisher, a vanguard, a crossbowman, Neco's getting cards out. He just got to spread the board, and he's the one that's done idle damage so far. So far, iScRE4m has been pushing, but has not been able to break through. But with 2 direct damages there, notice he used the Iron Whip to decrease the life of those Waking Stones. Interesting move there. Suddenly, Neco, what does he have left? He moves the Hellspitter Mortar. Sure, he probably wanted to move him the other way, but here we go. iScRE4m having some board control, and suddenly Neco getting some big guns out. 2 Vanguards, 1 General. These guys could clump up for some major pain, but of course, he had 2 Thunder Surges. iScRE4m ditches 1 for resources. He could actually Violent Dispersal 1 guy. He does. He decides to do that to the General. So now all we're left with is 2 Vanguards, just some scary units for everybody. And in fact, Neco there, I got to slow down here because the replay engine goes a little too fast for me to keep up. The Pother there, very good, because that means that Scattergunner's gone. Push back on the Gravelock Elder to force iScRE4m to slow down and put him out again. So there's a Ducal Skirmisher as well. He'll get an attack buff next turn if iScRE4m can't do anything about it. And that Potion of Resistance could be a saving grace there. It's a really great card for just 1 energy. But right now, he's going to have to figure out what he wants to do here. Is it going to be a Copper Automaton? Is it going to be a Potion of Resistance on the Gravelock? He decides to protect the Automaton, which you may say is a little strange, but remember here, is this is going to be lucky? No, not this time. This unit's going to do 4 damage and then die no matter what. You don't want to summon it just to be a meat shield if you don't have to. And with the Potion of Resistance there, it's in good shape. So maybe Neco is smelling that iScRE4m has a Thunder Surge in his pocket. Notice how he's just spread his units all about all of a sudden. So Neco getting a lot of cards on the board. Is he going to be able... Yes, he does take out the Hellspitter Mortar. And now iScRE4m does have some choices here. Is he going to Concentrate Fire? Is he going to Thunder Surge? Is he going to do all of the above? Right now, he could possibly take out these units if he does. Well, maybe not. Because Concentrate Fire will make an extra attack after this attack, so it's not going to do anything right away. So right now, he's got to figure out what to do at the bottom of this board. And he decides to put down the Scattergunner, go ahead and blow up one of the Vanguards. So next turn it could be a Thunder Surge, and next turn it could be any number of things. Concentrate Fire. But iScRE4m is currently, once again, facing overwhelming damage here as Neco decides, you know what, I'm going to clump my units anyway. A Thunder Surge is only going to do 2 damage. But there it is, the Thunder Surge right on cue. And right now, what does iScRE4m get? He gets a Burn, he gets a Bombard. But he just decides to sit on it because Neco probably doesn't have anything to get all these cards going this turn. But a quick Kabonk on the Scattergunner just to get more help out. And he does pushback, and once again those pushbacks are vital because those take away the Potions of Resistance as well. So right now Neco is going to have some units, all their cooldowns are synced anyway, so that's not really going to affect him there. But the Violent Dispersal is going to be very useful. Copper Automaton could be good. He gets out the Gravelock Elder as well. So from the looks of it, iScRE4m is prioritizing getting these 2 out first, trying to get some creature control because he does have the cards to sort of clear the board here. But with 14 order, Neco can play almost whatever he wants. Almost whatever he wants. As there's another Honorable General, and suddenly Neco gets down the first idol of the match. And he has some sweet, sweet board control. And if iScRE4m can't react, these 2 other idols could go down very, very quickly. So there's the Violent Dispersal. He does have a Cannon Automaton to play. He does burn to get some more, or to get out another unit, or Spark, excuse me, because there's no card draw. But now here are the 2 Elders. And unfortunately, unless he has a speed in his hand or something, Neco's not going to be able to attack one of them with this guy. But there's another idol down. Neco has to respond here. Has to respond. So he does have an Ether Pump he can play. He can Spark. He can burn and Spark. Get some more cards. Play a Fury potentially. Because that'll decrease everyone's cooldown by 1. Not this turn, but that could help him clear the board next turn. So there's the concentrate fire from iScRE4m. Just a lot to talk about on these turns. But there we go. He clears his board, and neco is left with the Ducal Spearman. He's got 2 idols down, but he's still got to get 1 more. And suddenly he can't just move his units down here and attack everything like maybe he was hoping. Instead, he's going to make a gambit for the top idol here. Once again, this is a good position to be in. If you can divide and conquer here, force your opponent to defend 2 idols instead of just clumping 1 and then clumping 2 in the top and then letting them defend all 3. But 2 potions of resistance aren't going to be so helpful. Thunder Surge is good on the other hand. As is an Ether Pump, so this is playing as defensively as he can up top. So neco now is maybe forced to go to the bottom as he does take out the other Gravelock Elder. And iScRE4m with 2 potions of resistance in his hand maybe could have avoided that if he had decided to play it, but the Gravelock's there. He does take out, or he does do 1 more damage, so it is possible that he's playing a little more defensively. He's got 2 walls up, and he's got a potion of resistance up here, so it's going to take a while for neco to play through down here. Meanwhile, the Hellspitter Mortar, maybe he'll get lucky again, but he certainly does have some defenses up. So let's see what neco can get. It's just he needs to punch through 1 more idol. But iScRE4m once again with the Violent Dispersal, once again with cards that he can play, another Gravelock Elder if he wants to. And if he can get the Gravelock Elder and if he can get out the Cannon Automaton the same turn, that'd be fantastic. But I'm sure iScRE4m's got to be a little upset with the Pother moving his Hellspitter Mortar into the middle of his field. I know he'd prefer to tuck that Cannon Automaton back behind it. Meanwhile, there's the Blessing of Haste, taking out the thing entirely. So iScRE4m's Gravelock Elder is looking down at a bunch of units saying, well, what am I going to do? He gets out 2 Ether Pumps. So these guys could do a lot of damage all at once if neco lets him. But he's going to kabonk and try and do some direct damage. He's going to Pother, and that's really an unlucky Pother in a way. Because it'd be nice to move this structure out of the way and then force him to defend the lane. But instead, with all the directions he could have gone, 1 in 5 chance and it goes back. So there's the pushback again. Best top deck ever, says iScRE4m. So just push back, push back, push back. He can get 2 Gravelock Elders out this turn. I know he's wanting to get out his Cannon Automaton. He has 2 of them. If only he can play all these cards the same turn. But there's another Ether Pump. And if all these things get to keep going, it's going to be trouble. But there is the Armor 1, which is going to be important for the Cannon Automaton, because that is a good defensive unit. And there's 2 focuses, and there's a kabonk, and a Ducal Skirmisher from neco. So he's going for it right now. He's getting all this stuff up here. So both Ether Pumps down. And now it's going to be up to iScRE4m to see how he can respond to this. He burns, he gets a Scatter Gunner, and that's going to be a decent meat shield if he so desires. But he gets out the Gravelock instead, which is, of course, what you want to do. You want to get out these Gravelocks as best you can. You want to get the Cannon Automatons out as best you can. And we have the Copper Automaton here is going to do pressure, and unless neco can do something about it, it's going to at least kill 1 of those infantrymen. But there's Imperial Resources again, getting even more order, so 16 order at this point, as suddenly iScRE4m is looking at got to defend his top area as well as his bottom. So there's the second Cannon Automaton, which once again will be very valuable. And there is iScRE4m's Gravelock Elder, and 1 Ether Pump going off, so overall lots of damage all around. And neco is back to pressuring the top. iScRE4m has successfully defended the bottom. So notice round 35. This game is just a war of attrition at this point. Just a huge, huge, huge match. And everything neco's tried to do to push, iScRE4m has had an answer. He's been able to bat him back. But the question is, can he keep it up? neco eventually is going to possibly... I don't know if he's going to break through or not. If this is going to be like a turn 50 match or something. But there is Inferno Blast to do a little bit more damage. And notice iScRE4m starting to move down here as he plays the Bombard as well. So ranged units, everyone gets their cooldown knocked down by 2. And you see what units are suddenly in trouble? 1, 2, 3, 4. Suddenly iScRE4m is going to have a huge card advantage. And he has a great follow-up in hand possibly with another Cannon Automaton on the board. So there we go. Of course, I would be bad to forget just briefly about the Waking Stones there, of course. But notice the Bombard let those 2 hits take out 1 Waking Stones. Cannon Automaton to actually take out the Vanguard. So Neco has gone from having his Ball of Death down to 16 order and just 2 cards in his hand. Meanwhile, iScRE4m has something very scary. So he has a 3rd Gravelock Elder he can play, and if you can get 3 Gravelock Elders on the board, your opponent is in trouble, especially if you can put a Cannon Automaton behind him. I don't know why I keep calling it copper. But round 37, and after weathering the storm of Neco, it looks like iScRE4m may be able to push this back. But with more Waking Stones, it's going to buy Neco more time to get more units out. And iScRE4m's doing a great job of using direct damage, using things like Bombard to his advantage. But he gets rid of the Ether Pump. He knows that he's got to start being offensive here. He does have the Violent Dispersal if he chooses to use it. But at this stage of the game, it's really going to be a matter of, can he start hitting some of these idols? So he uses the Violent Dispersal on the Waking Stones, which, don't forget, you can use that on any unit, walls or otherwise. And he does have a Concentrate Fire as well, which will give him an extra attack, but he just elects, well, he doesn't have the energy to use it. But he does put down the Scatter Gunner. So suddenly iScRE4m has a ton of stuff on the board. And there's his first idle damage of the game. I don't know if Neco's going to have the cards to fight back with this, but he does push back. And Neco says good game there. But I don't see a surrender. There's the surrender. Okay. So, really good match there. Neco almost pushes it and has it. But iScRE4m able to just get back on the board, get back on his feet. And that's where with your Earth Energy, you don't want to get discouraged. You just got to keep pushing, trust the cards that you have, use the direct damage, try and use your walls as best as possible. But there we go. Neco conceding defeat because iScRE4m was just able to defend until finally, near turn 40, he was able to control the board. So that's it for this Scrolls replay. This is Way to Fail. If you have your own replay you want to send to me, feel free to do so at w2freplays@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope you all enjoyed this. Keep playing Scrolls. I will see you all next time.